Shabbat Shalom. In the late 80s, just a few years after my family had moved to France, and living in the same village as us in France were our family friends, the family of Yossi Halevi, who's come here before to speak, the author and journalist. And for that year, he was working for a consortium of American newspapers as their European correspondent. And it was a very busy year because it was the year of the fall of the wall and of all those changes in Eastern Europe. And I remember him going away for long weeks to interview people in Poland and Germany, all about the changes, the fall of the Soviet Union, the fall of the wall. And I remember him coming back one day with a real piece of the Berlin Wall. And I thought this felt very real suddenly, seeing it. And a symbol of hope, the wall came down. And for him personally, he's written about this, but he came from a family of survivors. His father spent the whole war in a pit. And he grew up with very mixed feelings about that part of the world. But here he was interviewing Germans and Polish people and finding common ground around the end of the Soviet Union and the new freedom. And it really felt like a miracle, a new start. Here was the symbol, piece of the symbol of the Cold War between the Soviet Union and the West that just crumbled down. And how we all hoped it would usher in an era of common prosperity, of peace, of interdependence, of connection for the whole world. And it felt so close. And maybe it did find some fulfillment. But we also couldn't quite hold on to it either. We've seen the cracks and divisions over the years, and culminating what's been happening for the past 2 months, the invasion of Ukraine. And if the beginning of Passover is all about deliverance and how we leave Egypt, the end of Passover is how we stay out of Egypt, how we keep that redemption. Because the slaves, they left Egypt, but it still wasn't the end. They reached the Red Sea, and suddenly they looked behind them, and there was Pharaoh and his armies running after them. And so they panicked, but we know what happened. The miracle happened, and the waters came up, and they ran through, and they experienced the great miracle. And what an incredible redemption that must have felt like, to see the Egyptians gone, and they sang and they danced. But even then, it wasn't the end. They had to hold on to that and keep on going to the joy of a new birth, of a new start. Keep holding on to that. And it wasn't easy. How many times they wanted to go back to Egypt for the cucumbers of Egypt, the garlic of Egypt. It would happen again and again. It was not the only challenge. Of course, when they arrived at the shores of the Red Sea, the other challenge was that not only were they having trouble holding on to the new experience, but the Pharaoh was running behind them. Pharaoh didn't want to let them go. Because Pharaoh, he permitted them to go in the last plague after seeing all the death in his own household. But here, finally waking up, dawning on him that his slaves were about to leave and it was a defeat for him, not a deliverance. He couldn't let go of that. And so what did he do? He pursued. He refused to allow that freedom to come. Pharaoh would not let him enter a new era. And for us, this second element, not only you have to hold on to it, but sometimes you have a Pharaoh coming to get you. It feels very relevant. And we know the president of Russia spoken about how the fall of the Soviet Union was the greatest geopolitical failure of the past century, and shared stories, true we don't know, of how in the aftermath of the fall of the wall, which was a deliverance for some, others, he lost his job. He was driving a taxi. Gorbachev, who's a hero for us of freedom, is widely seen as a failed leader in Russia. And so the president of Russia could not let go of the Soviet Union. So when we push ahead, we have to keep guard. There are those who do not want to accept the new beginning, don't want to accept the move forward. I want to tell us, you're never really free. You're not free. You think you've left Egypt, but you think you are free, but I'm not going to allow that to happen. And so we have to keep guard. And we have those two elements, keeping a hold of within ourselves the values that we're trying to bringing together people for a new way of being and letting go of the past and bringing everybody on board, holding on to the new values, and new openness, and new ideas, fairness for all involved. And we have to keep guard against the pharaohs, internal and external, who don't want to let us move forward, who are pursuing, who believe it was an error to ever let it happen in the first place, or wish to return to the way it was. We're trying to bring one back. And then sometimes there's nothing we can do. Pharaoh is just coming. And what do we do when that's already happening? So we have to do what the Israelites did. We need a whole new level of redemption at the Red Sea. And when they looked around, there was Pharaoh coming to grab them. And in front of them was the choppy waters of the sea. And they turned to Moses, what do we do? And Moses started praying, and God says, don't look at me. They've got to do something. And then we know one man, Nachshon ben Aminadav, dared to walk into the waters, and they parted. And of course, there was grace in the situation, but someone had to dare to walk into the waters. And so when the Pharaoh runs after freedom, one can't just point and say, look, it's happening. There's that bad guy running after us. We have to also step into the waters. Perhaps this is what we can say Ukraine has done, walked into the waters. And we still wonder, what's the best way for us to do that? Walls fall down, redemptions come our way. Redemptions we could have never believed. But it's not the end of the story. We need to keep walking through the waters. We need to keep seizing redemption. We need to keep pushing it forward. We're challenged to keep the pharaohs at bay, to not become complacent, to bring all of our new beginnings to fruition, to tend to them with love and care, and let them blossom. When the pharaohs do come, to be like Nachshon, to walk into the waters, and to do all we must to reach the other side, to be Bnei Chorin, so that all can be Bnei Chorin, all can be free from tyranny, all can be free from slavery, all can be free from Egypt. So we can all go to the mountain to meet God and walk towards the promised lands of our dreams. Chag Sameach.